If you would like to support the podcast and get some extra content while you're there, head on over to patreon.com/Severe MMA podcast and sign up. From the rewatch to the Q&A, we will have loads of content every week. So sign up, patreon.com/Severe MMA podcast. And now, here's the podcast. Welcome everybody. It's episode 320 of the Severe MMA podcast. By God, we've been doing this a long time. My name is Sean Sheehan, joined today by the Anthony Pettis of Irish MMA Media, Graham McDonald, as we discuss an interesting week in the world of mixed martial arts from an Irish point of view. Lots of big fights coming up next week as well, so we have lots to talk about. But today, we must...
Why Anthony Pettis? Just before you crack on.
Because Anthony Pettis is up in front of me right here. Back in the day, I entered a competition on the MMA Hour, which will be coming back soon, and I won a little Anthony Pettis doll thing. I'll put up a picture of it for people to see. And New York Rick got my address and he sent me out Anthony Pettis and all, and it's right here on my desk, right behind my computer, looking at me. So I was looking around, who would I call you? I actually have other ones as well that I've just got myself. I have a BJ Pinwan, a Tito Ortiz.
What was the MMA Hour competition about? Something to do with Nick Diaz that you entered? Am I remembering that correctly?
I don't know. There was loads of them with me back in the day. Do you remember there was like a pose?
Like Nick Diaz mean mug face or something, was it?
Yeah, maybe. There was a Frank Mir one as well, and Uriah Faye, but there was loads of them. Some of them have been deleted from my Twitter, so people can go looking for them if they want. They'll probably find a few. There probably are still a few there, but yeah, back in the days when I was a fan of MMA coming through, you know, and it was fun times, you know. We're still fans of MMA, of course, but yeah. Anyway, before we get into MMA and all of that stuff, let's give a shout out to Manscaped. The Olympics, the Euros, the major championships and concerts are all in this summer. You know what isn't? A wild, hairy bush. Tame your pubes with help from our friends at Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. Their third-generation's performance package includes the flagship Lawnmower 3.0. If an athlete treats their body like royalty, why not treat your pubes like Olympic gold? Fellas, do right by your balls and join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and use the code SEVEREMMA. You got free shipping as well as that 20% off. Me and Graham have been using them for a long time, and I believe there's some new stuff coming from Manscaped as well, so keep an eye out over the next week or so, and you'll be hearing a lot more from Manscaped. Some cool stuff coming, but the world is starting to open up, and the Performance Package 3.0 from Manscaped is here to help you get ready. The lawnmower trimmer is absolutely unbelievable. The Weird Whacker ear and nose trimmer, the Crop Preserver, the Ball Deodorant, the Crop Reviver toner, plus the 2 free gifts, the boxer briefs and the shed travel bag. Talk about world-class dismount into a post-quarantine world. This package is the perfect package for your package to meet performance in whatever sport you desire. The Lawnmower 3.0 is here to take you to the podium. The third generation trimmer has an unbelievable cutting-edge ceramic blade with the skin-safe technology, 7,000 RPM in the motor, LED light. Did you mention it's waterproof too? Of course it is. You can shave in the shower, less mess to clean up, just wash it away down through the middle. This package also comes with the Weed Whacker to chop the worst bits from your nose and your ears as well. 9,000 RPM, 360 degree rotary blade system. The I can't say that word. PROPRI proprietary skin safe technology, which has they pay us to do these reads. What the fuck? Nick Snags and
at least you know it's not pre-recorded and bottled. Canned content.
It is not indeed. After trimming your pubes, show them some sportsmanship with Manscaped's liquid formations, as I mentioned, the Preserver and a Reviver as well. Manscaped also threw in 2 free gifts, the boxers and the shed bag. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code SEVEREMMA at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code SEVEREMMA, SEVEREMMA at manscaped.com. Achieve pubic glory this year with Manscaped. Right, Graham, let's get straight into it. And I suppose the biggest news of the week, we've had we'll get into the fights later on, and actually we're recording some of this before the UFC fight, so I'll probably throw it over to Shawnee to talk a little bit about those UFC fights as well. But there's been So very big news this week, and a lot of the questions and stuff that has come in so far for us have been about Ian Garry. You know, when an Irishman signs for the UFC, it's big news, and when the guy the people are calling the next Conor McGregor, the next guy to come through, you know, we've had a bit of this, I suppose, in the early days, just as Conor McGregor was coming through, you had Pindred, you know, getting on the Ultimate Fighter, and they were saying, oh, he's going to be the next Conor McGregor, and you had Paddy Houlihan, and, you know, you had whoever else it might be, Paul Redmond coming through, and you had James Gallagher then, and Kiefer Crosby, and everyone like that. And now there's a lot of those are still going, especially James and Kiefer and everyone else like that. And I've often said it to people, it'll be very hard to get another Conor McGregor throughout the world, never mind out of Ireland.
There will never be another. It was like, you know what I mean? It was this perfect storm, and people are always asking in Ireland, oh, who's the next McGregor? Who's the next McGregor? But, like, you know, these guys are their own fighters. Like, Ian Garry is a completely different fighter than Conor. Carl Pendred, you know, I actually reminded me there when you said, I was at I can't even remember which fight it was. It might have even been Che Mills and Carl Pendred in London, the Cage Warriors,
Dublin.
And
I was at it. That was in Dublin. Yeah.
No. There was one where I can't remember. He had a title fight in London at one stage. I can't remember which one it was now. But I remember one of the media guys in Media Row turning to me and being like, "Well, he's nothing like Conor McGregor," and it's just like, yeah, well, you know. He's obviously been reading these articles about, like, oh, the next Conor McGregor or whatever, you know, like Joe.ie articles or these kind of things. So you know, it's always been a narrative, people who's the next McGregor, and it's, you know, it's easy to say it's never going to happen again, but, like, you know, it's never going to happen, or the chances of it ever happening again are slim, and the chances of it ever happening again to an Irish person is, you know, I don't know what the odds are, but they're very slim.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, it's a very different scene today. But I didn't mean to get into like an ex-Conor McGregor thing there. But, you know, Ian Garry, if anyone has done it in the way that he could become the next Conor McGregor, where he kind of organically grew with the things going around on WhatsApp and on social media before he even made his pro MMA debut with the amateur fights and all. And, you know, we were talking about him here on Severe MMA, and Niall and the lads were talking about him, and everyone in the Irish scene was talking about him, and those videos were going around. I interviewed him before he made his pro MMA debut, to all the fights he's had, to looking so good, to beating Figlak, who has gone on to do some great things, to winning the Cage Warriors belt, to, you know, that Imagine thing with his grandfather, to kind of Ariel getting on the bandwagon with him as well. If there is anyone on the way up who has the prospect of doing it, it's Ian Garry. He's done it in a very different way, but in a unique and kind of cool way at the same time as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has, but I think it's important to kind of, you know, stop making that association. You know, just let these guys be themselves, and I think it's important for them to be themselves as well, for people to kind of grow attached to them. If people think, oh, this guy's trying to be something else, or, you know, this guy's a carbon copy or of something else, then they're not going to be, you know, on the bandwagon. I think a lot of people in Ireland, you know, obviously kind of jumped on the bandwagon of MMA when it kind of exploded, and a lot of them have fallen off now. But for Irish MMA's kind of popularity going forward, somebody like Ian Garry, you know, going 7-0, beating good guys, being able to talk, like being a good media, or being able to handle the media well and all that stuff is huge, because, like, you need to have the fighting, obviously, but you need to have the all-round game as well. You need to be able to talk to the media, make people interested, and he's done that. Like, we've been talking about him for a long time, as you mentioned, because people have wanted us to talk about him. People are interested. People are always, you know, excited when Ian fights. So obviously there's a lot of stuff gone on around him, like before that Cage Warriors world title, and I hope he has time to get everything sorted, get a camp sorted, get settled in, you know, all that stuff before he fights in the UFC, because, you know, UFC debut is no joke. We've seen the, you know, the results sometimes be unexpected. Guys sometimes have a bit of jitters, or, you know, can maybe not perform to their top. I don't think Ian Garry showing any signs of that, but yeah, there's definitely you know, a lot of things I'd like to see sorted before he makes his UFC debut. But it's absolutely fantastic for him to get signed for the UFC, and it's great for Irish MMA. And Irish MMA needs guys coming into the UFC, and guys that are exciting prospects like this.
Yeah, and like I feel like in Irish MMA as well, over the last while, we had the wave coming through with Conor and Cahill and Aisling Daly and Paddy Hoolan and all of those people, and Norman just before them even, I think it was, and Gunny and Paul Redmond and Siri and everyone. I'm probably leaving out a few, Joseph Duffy and Artem and the rest of them, but people kind of got worried because that had kind of shut down for a while, and a lot of that was to do with straight Bellator gym, as John Kavanagh called it, all the SPG guys going to Bellator. But I think it was a little bit of an overreaction, I think, in Irish MMA, because of, like, if you listen to Ian Garry, I've spoken to him about it, and he's spoken to Cage Warriors after his last fight about it. Conor McGregor getting to where he got made Ian Garry get to where he got. He inspired him, he brought him on, and there will be that generation coming through who are inspired by McGregor and will come through because of it. But I don't want to make this all about McGregor. I want to talk a little about Ian Garry, and the points you made there, right? It's a very interesting one, because from the second Ian Garry made his pro debut, and I got him on the podcast, and I've been talking about him, and I've said, he's very good. People have been saying, cool down, calm it down now, you don't want to rush him, you don't want to get, and I think, Chris Fields even, who was his coach up until his last fight, I remember after that interview I did with him, which kind of went viral, the Barnsley and thing with Bellator replying to it saying, who's this kid, and, then he goes and wins the Cage Warriors title and is signed by the UFC, and they very quickly found out, I suppose. But I remember the next time Chris Fields was calling me a rat and everything, in a very joking manner, of course, for kind of getting that out of him. But I wasn't getting it out of him. He had that himself, he had that, he has that aura, he has that ability to speak and everything like that. And he has, the great team behind him, improves every time. We used to talk about it, on the podcast. He made a few mistakes, got hit a couple of times, and then he kind of give out to me afterwards in the next interview, maybe, and then he'd look better in the fight coming up, and he'd look better again and again. But for the first time ever, and it's funny to say it, a day or 2 days after he signs for UFC, there is questions about Ian Garry, because he has obviously broken up with his team. We've seen that now. It was kind of smoking mirrors there for a while, and I asked him about it and everything, and he came out after the fight. No news yet on where he is going to train. Now maybe there is, but I haven't heard it or hasn't come out and said it. So I think we spoke after he won the title against Jack Grant, and I think me and you agreed, and we've always been on this side of it anyway, whether it's Ian Garry or whether it's other people, to have an extra fight, have it maybe 2 fights, and then go to the UFC, get your next camp sorted, get your next load of training partners, your coach sorted. Maybe you'll go to a coach and you don't like him and you won't need to find someone else. It's a big move going to the UFC now and signing for the UFC now. When he said to me in that interview, and I talked about the Barnsley, and he said about Bellator, like, you can go and you can get the quick money now, or you can wait and do it the right way and get there. Well, he's done it the right way and got there, and he's won his Cage Warriors title. But it feels like if you were someone who was looking at a 23-year-old prospect from the very outside, and it's easy to say it from the outside, it's much harder to do it from the inside, but if you were to say a 23-year-old prospect looking for a new team, just won a championship in one organisation, would you be better off staying there, maybe getting a little bit of an easier fight, maybe in 2 fights, bedding down in a new camp, and then moving on, and then fighting the like I put up a tweet there yesterday.
Yeah, I think.
I'll turn it over to you after this, but I put up a tweet and said, who should Ian Garry fight in his first fight? And the replies were like fucking Kamaru Usman, and I know they were joking, maybe some of them. Mike Perry, people were calling for, and Danny Roberts and other people as well. Some very good names, some big names that people want to fight Ian Garry for. So that's the lofty competition he's been put into, and we've seen what's happened with the Cage Warriors fighters over the last while, especially the champions that have come through. The guys have been thrown to the wolves. Look at Jai Herbert. Look at the tough matchups he's got. And look at Reece McKee coming in. He wasn't even the champion in Cage Warriors yet. And look what they threw him into. Now, I don't think Ian Garry's going to get anything easier if past his prologue as well. And it's a dangerous, dangerous time to do it. No, that doesn't mean I'm saying I think he's going to lose or I think it's going to go badly for him or anything like that. but it's a big move and a brave move and a big statement. And look, if Ian Garry had gone in there and Chris Fields and everyone had been in his corner the last time and everything was fine and dandy, we wouldn't be making these statements or saying these sort of things. But it is a thing now for him, I suppose, to find out himself, for him to sort out in his team, and for it to go to kind of the next level. So look, it's interesting. Everyone, Ian Garry, everyone in Irish MMA, me, you, and everyone covering Irish MMA hopes he can get it right and do the right thing and get to the right place. But it's a big up in the air in the moment. But yeah, what were you going to say about that before we move on maybe to another part about this debate?
Absolutely. I was going to say pretty much what you said. I was a lot of what you said there. I was going to say as well, you know, obviously it does seem a bit rushed. I agree with you there, especially, you know, having listened to him over the years and the party kind of wanted to take the slow road. But, you know, nearly all the time when the UFC come in with an offer, you take it. You know, it's a big step up in money. Obviously, you know, he said things in the past about Bellator money, but, you know, he's in the UFC. He's where he wanted to be. That was the goal. So he's going to get paid more. He's obviously, you know, very confident, self-confident individual. These guys have to be, you know, these top MMA guys. They all have a ridiculous self-belief. Like, you know, if you're a lightweight, you're going out there thinking I can beat the best lightweight. If you're the heavyweight, you're thinking I can beat the best heavyweight. You have to have that mentality, and he does. And you know, he's not thinking, oh, I'm going to go in there and end up like, you know, a Joy Herbert or a Reese McKee, a couple of difficult matchups maybe that I lose, and then, you know, I'm kind of forgotten by the wayside. But you know, the other side of the coin is if you go in there and you beat a top guy or a really savvy UFC veteran, who's the next guy, you know, 3 months, 4 months down the line, you're having another step up, and then all of a sudden you're fighting a top 15 guy, and, you know, maybe a couple of extra fights in Cage Warriors would have been beneficial then, but, you know, also on the other side, maybe he'll go in and win those. And, you know, I just think it's a little rushed. Like, if you had a team, it'd be much easier to think it was the right time. But, you know, obviously we don't know when he's going to fight yet. We don't really know what's going on. Maybe he will take a bit of time to get a team together before they put him in a fight. Maybe they're in no rush to book him. But I don't think, you know, the matchmakers, as we've talked about in the past, are putting that much time and effort into the journey to kind of build these guys up. So it's kind of a lottery who he's going to get. So it'll be interesting to see. Yeah,
and we must remember as well, he carried an injury into his last fight and got a big cut as well. I'm sure the cut is okay, but he was talking afterwards about the injury he carried into that fight. So whether that's a thing of it's going to be healing, it's all right, it was only a 6-week thing and he might be all right already, or something, or it's something more serious, we don't know that either, I suppose. But London is coming up on September 4th. A lot of people, allegedly, that's the talk out there with the COVID and everything like that. We don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next, but you would think we're 2 months out from that, not even a month and a half out from that. I was looking at his Instagram today, he's out in holidays still, so I'm not sure if that would be the wisest in the world to take, or if that's what's going to happen. But he did just come from a camp, but when he's, as we mentioned, finding a new camp and everything, it's a big interesting one. Look, there was a bit of back and forth as well. I'm not going to get into this drama again because we spoke a lot about it, and I'd rather focus on the fight itself. And I want to say something else about Ian Garry in a second, but like, Graham Boylan put up about, congratulations to Ian Garry, but then he put up congratulations to like Chris Fields and stuff as well, and Lana Lee put up, who was his, I believe his partner and his business partner as well, I suppose, or his manager, you could say, that everyone started calling her, put like hashtag uncoachable on his Instagram, which we saw in the Team KF press release. So there's obviously, if people are talking about maybe them getting back together, him with his Team KF, and it doesn't seem like it at the moment after those sort of things, but that's obviously
it is a pity though for Chris and the guys. Obviously Tom, it would have been a very proud moment for that gym, having a UFC fighter so quick, and the obviously the Cage Warriors title would have been a big moment as well. But obviously, the UFC is kind of the pinnacle, and as coaches they obviously took them 95% of the way, and then obviously the falling out is very disappointing. And I'd say underneath it all, it must be disappointing for Ian as well. So obviously there's a bit of a, this could have been a kind of happier occasion for the whole Irish MMA scene, but it's obviously very, very good news and fantastic for Ian and fantastic for the MMA and the Irish MMA scene.
Yeah, 100%, definitely. And like a lot of people after the signing, and a lot of people throughout Garry's time, with us talking about him, and even on the bigger podcast, and every time someone mentions who's it going to be, the next guy coming through to the UFC, people are always saying, like, is he good enough? Is he, does he have the game? Is it all talk or anything like that? He has the game. He is good enough. He is very, very good. Like, his ground game is fantastic. He has submissions. He's strong. He's athletic. He's fast. He hits very hard. He improves all the time. Look, the issue obviously is the camping, but if he can get into a good camp and keep improving like that, he definitely has the ability. He
ticks all the boxes in terms of 100%. The boxes in terms of ability, and he's a fantastic prospect. He's a fantastic fighter already. You kind of need to stop calling some of these guys prospects when they, win Cage Warriors titles and sign for the UFC and stuff. But obviously because of his age, he is. But he's had a lot of amateur fights. He's had a lot of pro fights. He's looked fantastic, like improving fight to fight, as you mentioned. He really is a brilliant prospect, and somebody who has a lot of room to grow and as well, and has been shown that he can grow. And maybe sometimes a new team can teach you, when he does find a new team can teach you new tricks and to add new things to add to his arsenal.
Look, hopefully, I think everyone is probably hoping that's it. The loss of the old gym with the new gym, if he can get into a new one, will add another bit to him. But look, I don't often say it, I suppose, and people listening to these podcasts and listening to the Q&A often ask me, and I hate when people say, oh, I often get asked, but I literally do, because it's on the Q&A and the receipts are there, so you can go see it. But like, they ask me what someone's ceiling is, where they can get to, where they can fight to, and I very, very, very rarely say that someone has a top 5 ceiling even, or a championship ceiling. But I think with Ian Garry's ability, Ian Garry has a world title ceiling. That's where he could get to. Now, all has to go right. He has to. The next move is the biggest one. Make absolutely no mistake about that. If he picks the wrong camp, or he goes somewhere else, or he goes rogue, or something bad happens, he will not be a champion. Absolutely will not be a champion. But if it goes right, if he makes the right move, if he even goes back to TKF, if it was that possible, or if he, gets the right camp, whatever camp it might be that suits him and is right for him, I think he has that potential. He is that good. But we've seen people who are that good before, We've seen people who are that good and not reach it. We've seen people who maybe weren't that good and they still reached it because they picked the right camp, or they had the right coach, or it hit right at the right time. Like, look at Michael Bisping. I don't think he's as talented as some guys coming through, but he got there because he met with Jason Perillo.
He's a great example. He uprooted his life, went over to a different country, trained, and he fell a few, final hurdles, and he still, got it done. He was out on a movie set. He got a call to fight a guy who'd beaten him handily for the title, when he told Ariel in an interview that previously that he'd kind of given up hope and come to terms with the fact that he may never be a champion, or would never be a champion. So a lot of it is about time, being in the right time at the right place, and being ready. And sometimes it doesn't always come down to who has the best all-round talent and abilities.
Yeah, but it's coming more down to that, and I think MMA is becoming more a thing that is controlled, and that means the best become the best. That's why we're seeing better and closer fights. Maybe not as exciting, but I think MMA is really going that way. MMA was a sport that was very hard to control, but I think it's becoming more controllable. I was talking to Dan Hardy about it the last days. Last week as we came up and talked about the McGregor fight, and he said something to me which I've thought about a lot since. He's like, someone in the future who they call a southpaw or an orthodox fighter will only be half a fighter. If you could only punch from one side, or if you're going to fight from one side, you won't be as well rounded as the best people in the world. And I like, if you just think about that, and think about, let's say, if that is true in 5 years' time, that will make the sport something very, very different, like very, very different. And that's the level you have to be reaching for in a few years' time. Ian Garry at the age of 28, in 5 years' time, that's where he will need to be, someone who is that good and has no gaps at all. So look, I'm looking forward to the Ian Garry movement, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the rest of the guys coming through Cage Warriors as well, because we talked a lot about McGregor at that time when he broke through that gate and people saw him doing it, and he Martin always said he got over the wall and he pulled the rest of us up with him. I think I bet you Paul Hughes in training, if he's getting back after the injury that he had, I bet you he's another little pep in his step now to think, right, they're looking at us, they see us, we know they see us, but the Irish are coming again, and here we go. And the same for Joe McColgan, even though he taught me the last time that it might never happen, but he's the champion now as well, and I bet you he'll be thinking about it, and I bet you all the rest of them as well, John Mitchell and Palahan making his debut, who signed with Combatches America, to go over there and fight. They'll all be thinking about it, and I think it's a good time.
It's great for them, reinvigorating. It's been difficult, very difficult for the Irish MMA community and the Irish MMA fighters with all the stuff around Joe Carvalho, the lack of shows, the obviously coronavirus now these days, the last year or so. These guys kind of have had their career stalled by no fault of their own, and it's great for Irish MMA to see Ian Garry being signed and Joe McColgan being Cage Warriors champion in the conversation here. Like, could he get signed to the UFC? Paul Hughes, another great prospect. If he puts a couple of wins together, could he get signed for the UFC? Like, the Irish MMA community needs this. It needs these guys coming through, and as you mentioned, the other guys looking up. It is kind of shows them that maybe everything's getting back to normal, and that they can kind of start aiming for the heights of the UFC or huge fights like for Cage Warriors titles or big Bellator fights or wherever, KSW, like just getting themselves to the level that they kind of haven't had the chance to because of the surrounding circumstances out of their control.
Yeah, and there was this thing as well a while back with all the fighters going to Bellator, and I think there was some people trying to push these narratives that it was the end of Irish MMA and the end of MMA and around this part of the world. But look, MMA is a thing that's very short term, and it changes very quickly. And whenever there's big negatives like that, I think they can be turned around very quickly. And we see it now. We were seeing it. Dean Barry is there as well. Hopefully he'll be making his debut soon. But hopefully this is another turning point for Irish MMA.
Yeah, we got so many Irish people in the UFC or in discussion. I even forgot about one.
Dean Barry, Lauren Murphy got a title shot as well, so there you go. Lauren Murphy.
Sean O'Malley's not doing bad as well.
Sean O'Malley, Sean Brady, what a fighter he is. So that's very good. Another one. Look, speaking of Irish MMA fighters as well, we have to mention Conor McGregor as well, because it's a week out now from the fight, and I suppose I did a podcast the other day and I gave maybe my final thoughts, but a few things have come out since then, and we have to discuss them. It'd be wrong, I suppose, if we didn't. So he put out, look, he did that video on Instagram where he said that he was injured coming into it. John Kavanagh had already said he was injured coming into it in that interview he did with Laura Sanko. He said that the UFC, I don't want to, I'm paraphrasing here now, so go and look at the exact words that he said, but he said the UFC knew, the UFC doctors knew, and other people knew. He put up screenshots or photos then of his ankle wrapped and his ankle in ice and everything like that. I think like doctors have talked about it, and different people, the people I've talked to, all kind of go along with the case that if there was a stress fracture there, kicking it hard into someone else's leg and then ultimately stepping back in it is absolutely a way to break a leg. Now, who do you want to blame for that? Is that Conor McGregor's fault for knowing that could have happened with a stress fracture? Is it the doctor's fault? Is it the commission's fault for not examining him well enough? I don't know. We could have that debate all week. McGregor has in the past just refused to pull out of fights. We know that as one thing for a fact as well. I don't want to give my opinion too much on this, to be honest, because I'm sick of giving my opinion on this thing, because no matter what I said, if I come out here and said Conor McGregor is the worst human being to ever live on planet Earth, I would have people just going out giving out and mad about me. You weren't harsh enough on him. So I don't know what to say at this stage. But it does seem like the injury was real coming in, and that we talk about game planning, right? And if we were to look at the game plan for Conor McGregor without an injury, I think it was probably a good one. Now, it didn't end up going well in the end, but if you're coming in and you have that injury, kicking that leg is not the fucking smartest thing in the world to do, is it?
Yeah. Well, obviously, it depends when this injury happened, how far out. Like, if you're training for 2 months for a certain game plan, and then 2 weeks out, just before you head over to, start finishing the weight cut and all that, doing fight week. If it happened, it depends when it happened. Can you just change up the game plan completely at the last second? Like, if you do have to change the game plan up at the last second, you probably should be pulling out of the fight. Like, it sounds like, you should, like most fighters would have pulled out of that fight. You mentioned obviously in the past he's fought with some other bad injuries. Chad Mendez one as well, documented in our documentaries, obviously. So sometimes people need to be safe from themselves, and you think that if the UFC doctors knew, if all these guys knew, if everybody with influence around him knew how bad this was, then you think maybe you can delay this fight. You don't have to cancel the fight. You can stick it a month later or whatever, and nobody's gonna, these things happen in MMA all the time. Nobody's gonna bat too fucking too. What's the saying?
Bat an eyelid
at it.
I think a big issue with McGregor is, you said people around him should have said it. I think a big issue with him is not like I'm not going to go out here and I've said it to Conor McGregor himself in the interview I did with him about this whole yes man thing, and also if anyone says I'm avoiding that, go and listen to that interview, and I asked him straight out about it. So, but I think it's more right. Not it's less about
you can tell somebody something and they can not listen as well. You can true. Say here, I think this is a bad idea. You can say here,
exactly. Like I think
let's get a second opinion, or let's get a third opinion.
Yeah,
Who knows what's going on over there?
Let's get an opinion I like.
You know what I mean? We don't know what's going on there. I wasn't there. I don't know. I know as much as you about it.
You could look, yeah, I know, yeah, 100%. But we've seen in the documentary before, and you could probably tell us about it. But he is. I think anyone looking at Conor McGregor from the outside or seeing that documentary very much knows that he's a guy who dances to his own tune. He is not going to listen to other people in terms of the big decisions that he needs to be made. I'm sure if Owen Roddy comes in or John Kavanagh comes in and says, here's a new technique, here's a fight we saw, here's something, I'm absolutely sure he'd look at that. But in terms of these big sort of decisions, I would not blame the people around him for not having the influence on him to get him to say pull out of a fight if they knew about this injury, because Conor McGregor is such a huge personality, such a self I don't know what the word is, but self-assured, yeah, he's
confident.
John Kavanagh has
he's
said
probably thinking,
past,
I'll just rattle a few leg kicks in here, throw a few left hands, and I'll get it done quickly, and then I can rest the leg or whatever, the shin or the ankle or whatever the problem is. These guys, as I said earlier with Ian Garry, and these guys have to have this mentality of overcoming anything. They have this insane self-belief and drive and kind of narrow-mindedness about getting this job done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, a thing about it with Conor McGregor is there's so much money on the line here, and that self-belief where he probably thinks he is going to knock him out in a few seconds is. It all leads to me believe, it leads me to believe that if who are you to blame for this happening? Who are you to blame for it all happening? It's at the door of Conor McGregor himself, and I'm sure he's probably, in the cold light today. And he said it himself. He said some up and down moments, but I'm sure he's thinking, why the fuck didn't I pull out of this? I wouldn't have had this year of rehab. Okay, maybe I'd have 2 or 3 months of rehab, and we could put it on at the end of the year, maybe, and get those stress fractures fixed or whatever it might be. I'm sure he's thinking that, but there's also this thing as well, and it's a part that people just will not believe this. There'll be some people listening to this now and they'll be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why are you giving this any credence? What happened in the fight happened. Someone last week kind of sent me a thing and said, the fight itself, we talked about the parts of it that we did, and we did it okay, but then we didn't give Poirier enough credit for the win. And I think it's a very difficult one, because to me it's like one of those fights. Do you remember that time Jake Ellenberger got caught in the fence and he couldn't get out and he ended up losing by TKO? I can't even remember who fought him. I cannot even remember who fought him. That was the story of the fight. McGregor getting injured is the story of this fight, and that's shitty for Dustin Poirier, but it just is the story of this fight coming in. And do you know what the problem with it is? Habib, when he beat Conor, the story of the fight after that, okay, if the jumping out of the cage hadn't happened, it probably would have been Conor McGregor losing more than Habib winning. That is just a matter of factness of this situation. And also, when anything happens with McGregor, when something happens like this, there will be a certain cohort of people who refuse to believe it, who refuse to believe any of these injuries are real, and there will be a cohort of people that think 100% everything that Conor McGregor, John Kavanagh, and Roddy say is 100% correct. And like, we have to try to find a medium in the middle, and finding that medium in the middle will make both of those people extremely mad. Now, this will probably be the last week we talk about it for a while, so that's all well and good. I won't be getting as much abuse, but if you feel like abusing me, let me know it. But keep listening, please. keep listening. But I think the reaction to it has been a very similar reaction to a lot of McGregor fights, but I think with a lot more vitriolic kind of anti-McGregor stuff because of the shit McGregor talked and because of his terrible promos all week. I think really it is it, but 1.8 million people still tuned in. And I didn't like what McGregor did all week. His reaction afterwards, absolutely didn't like it at all. But if we're in combat sports and he's still there, like, I wish it wasn't this way. I wish Wonderboy was the biggest draw in the sport, because I absolutely love Wonderboy, but that's just the way it is. What have you thought of, like, the breakdown of that fight all week, from a fighting point of view, first of all, I suppose, but also from like a reaction to what happened point of view?
Well, I think if people are on Poirier's side, if you kind of say anything that isn't full credit to Dustin, they think like you're discrediting him or something. But it's not the case, Obviously, as you said, when something like this happens, for example, a similar thing happened, Weidman and Anderson. The story wasn't, oh my God, there's a new champion for the first time in how many years, Anderson Silva, the legend's finally been defeated. It was, oh my God, like, he fucking broke his leg.
Well, the leg break was the second fight, but
sorry.
You're right though. At the same time,
the story was, oh, Anderson was clowning around. It took away from it. But yeah, that point kind of falls by the wayside a little bit. But
the point still stands though, even if you forget the leg break. If you look at the first fight, people were saying Anderson was clowning and it was him. And I remember watching that fight and I was like, oh, he got knocked out, like it was more, when you were watching that live, it was about Anderson clowning. Then you were watching the second fight, Weidman won again. The difference between that fight and the McGregor fight is even more so. Like, Poirier, I don't think anyone can argue Poirier did a technique to win that fight against McGregor. No one could argue that, right? You could argue McGregor's techniques that he threw were foolhardy because he was injured, but Weidman did.
No, people are arguing. People are saying that it was like the UFC broadcast and all was saying that it was a check leg kick, and I think that influences some people as well. I think Joe Rogan was talking about some kickboxer had sent him some video or something. I don't know. I didn't really click into it.
They were all stupid. Every single one of them just fell by like any bit of scrutiny when you didn't want to see it. You weren't looking for the answer. You weren't looking for a answer. You were looking for the answer. I think all of them fell by the wayside. But if you say the second Anderson Silva,
we're just biased, especially biased. Me. Obviously, but you as well.
What the fuck did I do? I've been awfully accused of bias.
But you're Irish, you're Irish, so you must be biased.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I think you got to try and look at it. Obviously, it's very hard to take the emotion and all the bias and everything like that around out of that. But I think if you look at it as fighter A versus fighter B is the best way to do it. And sometimes like the emotion and the crowd and the commentators and everything can influence things a bit too much. At the moment, the nervousness, the occasion, everything plays a factor, and people are emotional about this fight because they care either way. What happens if he wins, if he loses? This is what makes these fights mean more. There's more jeopardy. I think Rogan and whoever else was a DC on the commentary. They were saying like, I'm actually shaking, nervous here. Like I don't know how these guys do this to us. You know what I mean? It's that's all part of the fun. So I wouldn't worry too much. People are having their opinions and are shouting them loudly, and fair play to them. But You know, I just think, you know, you can only say what you think, and, you know, you can't cater to how people are going to react to what you're saying.
It is very true, yeah. And look, some people will want us to be biased, I'm sure, and, you know, some people want the fan TV thing. This was the first...
We could just do like BBC or ITV, like Euro commentary.
Yeah.
We could just be absolutely ridiculously biased.
Yeah, dreadful.
If you think we're biased, just go watch that, and you'll feel better about us.
Yeah. But look, this is a thing we've obviously had to deal with for a long while. I don't mind dealing with it, but it's weird for the first time ever watching the fight and going into the fight. I didn't really feel, or not watching the fight, but going into the fight, I didn't really feel any of that. You know, we were very much talking about it down the middle. I picked Poirier. I think a lot of the Irish people pick Poirier, and some people give it out to us, calling me anti-Irish for picking Poirier, but I've had that before as well. But like watching the fight, I watched it, and maybe it's because of all the judging shy talking I've been doing over the last while, but I watched it in a very, very fighter A versus fighter B thing, and I think maybe that's because of the amount we talked about the Mendes versus McGregor fight before, and how when you look at that fighter A versus fighter B, the first round, it's very different than this is Conor McGregor fighting in there. Everyone listening to this podcast has an opinion on Conor McGregor, and if you don't think you're swayed by that opinion, you're going mad. Now, you're probably saying the same about me, but like, I don't know. I didn't find it in that fight. In past fights, I've looked and I'm like, I was very nervous to see the result. I wasn't like nervous that someone would get knocked out or someone. I was like, you'll be like standing up and like, oh, what's going to happen? What, you know, one of those, you know, like watching a fucking penalty shootout if Man United were in there or something. You'd be, you know, or just like, it doesn't matter. Just something big like that, something with big jeopardy. But this one, I don't know, it just felt a little bit different. I don't know, it was odd, but yeah, look, I suppose it's very hard to analyse a McGregor fight, and it's not unlike anything we've ever seen in the sport before, just because of the amount of caring people do about Conor McGregor. You know, it's and as well, it's very hard to park, and we've seen this with other people as well, like, you know, even Greg Hardy. It's very hard to park one side of it to talk about another, without people thinking like you're ignoring it. If we go out and talk about Greg Hardy's jab for a half an hour, that doesn't mean we're okay with what he's done outside of the cage, or allegedly what he's done outside the cage, or the same goes for John Jones, or the same goes for, you know, whoever else it might be. But sometimes you park that and you look at one side of it, and then everyone's like, well, what about this and what about that? Well, you know, we tried to talk about them at other places, but however, this could be a debate we go round and around about forever. But look, I think Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor, and everyone listening to this podcast probably hopes that Conor McGregor gets back very quickly, or not, maybe not very quickly, but very healthily, and we can do it again, brother. Do you know what? I was thinking, this is manna for heaven for Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier got two of the biggest fights he'll ever have, the two biggest fights he'll ever have, and now he's getting a third one probably because of this. This is, Dustin Poirier won the fight, and he got another Conor McGregor fight out of it. People are saying, you know, you're not giving credit to Dustin Poirier. He's the victim here. Dustin Poirier is the big winner here. Just the huge winner. And he gets a title shot. And Dustin Poirier, how lucky is that man? And lucky is the wrong word. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it was
definitely the wrong word. You're going to get slated.
Fuck's sake.
Shang-Chi and Dustin Poirier lucky.
That'll be the headline. But I've hopefully people to listen to the last 30 seconds I talked about there, but what a fucking...
That out of context is way more fun.
Context is way more fun, but what a result for Dustin Poirier. He got it all. Paid in full. Fair play to him. Right. There is a UFC card next week, and it's the only real big card next week, and I will hand it over to Shang-Chi after this then to talk about the Makhachev versus Moises fight, which I'm looking at my topology here, and it starts in 10 minutes, so that should be fun. So there's UFC next week, and then nothing else for 2 weeks. We have UFC 265 after that then, and or actually that's 3 weeks from here. There's UFC Fight Night in 2 weeks as well. But next week there's a pretty good card coming up, to be honest. Topped by TJ Dillashaw versus Corey Santegan. But we also have Aspen Ladd against Macy Chiasson, which, you know, could be a number one contender for the 135 pound title. Adrian Yanez, who's looked good recently, against Randy Costa. Brendan Allen against Punahele Soriano, who's 8-0. Shami is fighting Chris Dawkins, and Chris Dawkins is one of those up and coming heavyweights as well, who could be next in line for someone like a Tom Aspinall or something like that. So if you're a UK fan listening to this, maybe that's one to keep an eye on. Kyler Phillips, Ruin Paiva, Miranda Maverick against Macy Barber. What a fight that is at 125 pound division. That could be one of those. The winner of that, I would suggest, will probably be fighting for a title sometime in the next year. Mickey Gall is back here. A lot of people calling for Mickey Gall to fight against Ian Garry in Ian Garry's UFC debut. So if he wins here, maybe that's it. Ian Heinisch is on the card as well against Imavov. Julio Arce against Andre Ewell. Darren Elkins, my boy, Team Sheehan against Derek Minner, who is, I believe he's a training partner of James Gallagher now, if I'm not mistaken. But there's some other good fights as well. Sajara Eubanks is on the card against the 4-0 LC Reed. There's a lot of fucking fights in this. Hannah Goldie against Diana Baccia and Trevin Jones against Aaron Phillips. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 fights on this card. Holy Jesus. But let's talk about the main one, Graham. TJ Dillashaw versus Corey Santegan. TJ has had, 2 years off now? After, I wonder what happened to him. I wonder what it could have been. EPO, I believe it was, wasn't it, for TJ Dillashaw? They've done a UFC special.
I think it was that Mexican steak again.
Mexican steak, Canelo steak, maybe. But it's the start of 2019. He hasn't fought since against Henry Cejudo, and that seems like an absolute fucking lifetime away at this stage. But the opposite then can be said, I suppose, for Corey Santegan, who has had an insane time since then. He fought, was it on the same night, the 19th of the 1st? Let me just look here. Yeah, the exact same night. He fought against Mario Bautista, fought John Lineker after that, Rafael Assunção, lost to Sterling, beat Moraes, beat Edgar, all since then. So this is one of those fights where I've looked at Corey Santegan over the last few, and obviously he lost to Sterling, got choked out in 88 seconds, and was made look very ordinary in that fight, but come back and look fantastic. I've seen the coming out of a very good fighter who is like a new level of MMA in a lot of ways, whereas TJ Dillashaw was that before, and he once was that. TJ Dillashaw, 2 years out of the game, and let me just look at his age here. What age is he? Like 35 years of age. For a small guy at 135 pounds, this is going to be a tough fight for TJ Dillashaw, isn't it? Like, at their best.
Yeah, it's no easy comeback. Like, obviously he beat Cody Garbrandt back-to-back impressively in big kind of grudge matches, and then obviously lost to Henry Cejudo, which is, there's no shame in that, but he's been out for a long time since then. He's coming in against a guy who's been very active, as you mentioned. This is a really, really tough fight to pick. Like, there's a lot of questions around TJ. Obviously, he's been champion before, and he's definitely, a very, very good guy. He's been an upper echelon guy when we've seen him active, but is he still now? As you said, he's getting on for a lighter guy. There's a lot of speed guys at that division. Like Corey Santegan is a very good fighter. He's obviously been, he basically only lost to the champion Sterling, and as you said, it was a bit of a one-sided fight, but he never really got going in that fight. And Sterling's one of these guys who can kind of, he can do that to anybody nearly. So this is a really interesting one. It could go either way. It's a real pick 'em fight. Yeah,
it really, really is. Like, I would favour Santegan just because of all I said coming into him. What you said there as well, that time out and the age and the speed. I think Santegan is very powerful as well, and we've seen TJ down through the years knocked out by Henry Cejudo, knocked out by John Dodson as well. He definitely can be got that, and those were 8 years apart, I know.
Well, that John Dodson knockout was like a flash knockdown that the ref blew it as well and stopped the fight.
I suppose it was, yeah. But like, the older you get as well at those divisions, I just feel like it will be, and I think, look, TJ throughout his career became harder and harder to hit all the time. Getting knocked out in 32 seconds. Okay, he went down a weight and he's back up, but 2 years out, no longer on the EPO. It's a tough night for TJ Dillashaw. I think we probably would have been better off long term for taking maybe something easier, but I think this one is there for Santegan to take, to be honest. But if you're looking at it from TJ's point of view as well, and you're looking at the Sterling fight, that's the kind of the outlier, I suppose, for Santegan over the last while. If I was TJ, I'd be saying, right, okay, his stand-up is very good, and I'm sure he'll be happy with that, but definitely put a few takedowns in there. Try to get that fight to the ground. TJ's a very good wrestler as well. And I'm sure Santegan will be thinking about that, but if he lulls him into a kind of a false sense of security, can stay safe over the first 2 or 3 minutes, didn't get a takedown, at that time in, land a good bit of ground and pound on top, you could see him stealing rounds with takedowns, and stealing rounds with the takedown and what comes after the takedown, I should say. But I'm really looking forward to that fight. I think on the feet, look, if you're prime TJ Dillashaw against prime Corey Santegan, that's that. Where did I get that one from? I think that would be a fantastic matchup. But I'm very interested to see if we have a prime TJ Dillashaw here next Saturday night. It'd be very hard to have one. It'd be very, very hard to maintain that 2 years out when you're 35 years of age. But let's see it. Also as well, before I hand it over to Sean Sheehan here, there was a Bellator fight night on Friday night. I saw a load of people giving out that this was like one of the most boring cards ever, and I'm thankful that I didn't watch it all, to be honest. But Diana Agravasova got a split decision win there. Cody Law moved to 4-0 on the undercard as well there. Johnny Elbin moved to 9-0. Arlene Blinkow, who will be in line now at 145 pounds for, could it be Leah McCourt? Could it be Chris Cyborg? Could it be Sinead Kavanagh? One of those fights. Blinkow will be there, and I suppose they're very different sort of fights, but depending on what happens next with Cyborg, I think it could be one of the two Irish ladies who get Blinkow next. So a big win for her there, and a big fight for one of them. Matthias Matas got a win over CJ Hamilton then, and the two big fights. First of all, I know you watched the Matt Mitrione. What did you? I want to get your opinion. When I saw this fight, first of all, the first thing I thought of was getting your opinion on it. What did you think of Matt Mitrione's performance here?
Oh God, I think
that's all you need to say. Oh God.
Obviously he was like too busy kind of shouting at the ref about a headbutt to kind of bother to defend himself. After the headbutt, but the headbutt, Fortune came in a bit high with his takedown, but Mitrione dipped his head into the head and they clashed heads, and there was no like malice in it whatsoever, and it didn't open up any kind of big cut or anything like that. So just get on with it. It happened. Like, both guys hit heads. The ref didn't stop it, or maybe the ref didn't see it, or you just got to get on with it. You can't just fucking moan the rest of the time until you basically tap out the strikes.
Yeah, it didn't even look like it affected him in any way apart from mentally. It was.
I think it was because he was saying like it's 2 fights in a row. He just kind of
he lost it.
The anger took over.
Yeah, he was like he lost it. He started having it up.
Like, ref, are you fucking serious? Like, he just headbutted me like 2 fights in a row.
It was, if it wasn't tragic, it'd be funny. Like, honestly, but I don't know. With Matt Mitrione, he is like I was talking on a podcast that I did with Blake Harrison, which will be coming out next week. I think about sometimes we're too soft on fighters and we don't like tell the truth about it. Like, if you're looking at this fight, how can you not look at it and like criticize Matt Mitrione for it? First of all, right? Okay, let's say Matt Mitrione is absolutely right and the referee should have called it for a headbutt, right? He didn't call it. If you're a soccer player in the middle of the field and you get fouled and you keep running, you're not just going to like stop running because you think it's a foul, or you're going to keep going and try to fucking score a goal or whatever your sport it might be, and if you do, you'll get told right quick because someone else will be in and get the ball and take it off you. Matt Mitrione, he was in a fight, the referee did not call it, and he just gave up. Matt Mitrione gave up in this fight, and I'm not talking about tapping the strikes. He gave up before that. He decided that he found an out. He found a way, like Conor McGregor sitting, doctor stoppage, to kind of save face afterwards. In his mind, it felt like Matt Mitrione, when he got head-butted in the head clash, at that stage, it felt like, right, I have my excuses in. Perfect. Let's just end this fight. I have my excuse and we can move on. That's what it felt like, and he just like gave up from second one. A few shots from Tyrell Fortune didn't even try to get out, tapped the strikes. Just typical Matt Mitrione, I think. Anyone who's seen Matt Mitrione down through the years, this is, he's a very good athlete, very strong, hits hard, good in all areas, but doesn't have the head for it. Just does not have the head for MMA, and meathead. Meathead by name and meathead by nature, I suppose. Look, fair play to Tyrell Fortune. That was a well-earned victory. Like this, we haven't mentioned Fortune here, and he was the one who went out and won and got a guy to tap the strikes. So it can happen, lads. And Matt Mitrione is not Irish.
You're a Matt Mitrione shill.
Matt Mitrione shill. You dirty American. Where's Matt Mitrione from? I'm an NFL shill. That's what I am. Matt Mitrione played he had a cup of coffee in the NFL.
It was kind of. I remember when he was in the Ultimate Fighter, there was kind of debate about whether he was putting on an act of being really weird or he was just really weird.
I think he is really weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe he hammed it up a little bit, but I think he may be quite weird.
He was definitely hamming up in the fight at the week anyway, but sure, these things happen. And in the main event, honestly, this is one of the best technical fights I've seen all year. This was a fantastic fight, and I wasn't expecting it, to be honestly, between Juliana Velasquez and Denise Keelholz. Go out of your way to see this fight if you're just a fan. This wasn't a rock'em sock'em robots back and forth, beat down or anything like this. This was just a good old-fashioned technical kickboxing match. Very, very, very close. Juliana Velasquez won a split decision, moved to 12-0. Denise Keelholz moved to 6-3, which doesn't look like the best record in the world, but she could very easily have been 7-2 and been a champion here, because it was that close. Brian Minor was the one who scored it the other way, and he's one of the best judges in the world, so that'll tell you how close this fight was. Look, some people are giving out about the result. Those people haven't a clue what they're talking about. There was very, very close rounds in this. Keelholz started brilliantly in the round 1. Velasquez came back in round 2, but that was close as well. Round 3, then I think all 3 judges had it for Velasquez, if I'm not mistaken. And then 4 and 5 were close enough as well. I gave 5 to Keelholz after the first as well, I think. So I gave the middle 3 to Velasquez, if I'm not mistaken. People probably see it on my Twitter anyway to make out fully. So I did give it to Velasquez, and she was the one who got it. But I could see it 4-1 to Keelholz, to be honest. It was one of those fights very, 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 very close and very good. And I hope they run it back again, to be honest, because, that... One thing I was thinking about as well, coming in, watching this fight, and the interim heavyweight title fight the last time, Bellator have an awful issue recently of title fights flying under the radar, and that's not a thing that's happened that much in MMA down through the years, just because they've been relatively rare, even with outside promotions. We don't have this shit like in boxing where there's 1,000 titles. Now there's more and more, and has been for a few years, but I feel like Bellator, if they're putting on title fights, right, Bellator don't have that many cards a year, put a big fight. Let's say this was like a fight night where you had not a great card and then one on top. Put a big fight on this, like an MVP, like a Paul Daly, like something like that, which is a non-title fight. And then put this fight on with the interim heavyweight title fight. Put 2 title fights on the one thing, build it up, 2 title fights on this, do it that way. I think when you put one on it, and it just doesn't look as good, it flies under the radar a little bit, where if you've 2 titles on it, and maybe one other big fight as well, you make them one of these tintpole cards, you make it a big card. Now, they do that sometimes, and they have them, but I think you need to do that every time, make all these cards. Look, if MVP is on the top of a card, people are tuning in. If the flyweight title is on the top of the card, people aren't always tuning in. You have to give them a reason. And maybe the same things can be said about other titles. Put those titles together and make them a reason together. So that'll be the one. It's not a criticism really of Bellator. It's just, it's just a suggestion maybe. I really enjoyed this fight, so I couldn't say anything bad about it. And I'm just actually kind of a little bit mad that more people probably weren't tweeting about it and talking about it on Friday night. But however, right, thank you, Graham, for joining me. And I'm going to hand it over now to Sean Sheehan to talk about Makhachev versus Moises for about 2 minutes. Good luck. Thank you very much, Shawnee. And yes, it is going to be very quick here because it's currently 20 to 6 in the morning. Not a bad card, I would say, but not one with much of note, to be honest. I'll run you through some of the undercard. Nascimento and Gordon got 2 wins to start off the card. Sergey Morozov from Kazakhstan cut a great promo after his win against Khalid Taha. Amanda Limas, probably the standout in the whole card. Oh, fantastic win there. 2 lovely shots. Good stoppage as well by the referee. I think it was Chris Tioni. Ruiz got straight up and she was like, all right, I'm still fighting, but she was clearly hurt badly. And I thought that was a very, very good stoppage there. At 115 pounds, she's now 10-1. Looked very dangerous recently, and I say again tonight. So she's right up there towards the top. Same could be said for Daniel Rodriguez, who moves to 15-2 at 170 pounds. I know a lot of people talking about Ian Garry. What about Ian Garry against Daniel Rodriguez? What a fight that would be. A beautiful TKO with punches against Preston Parsons. Look fantastic. That Billy Quarantillo fight against Gabriel Benitez. It was going for one that was going to be like 30-24, but Billy Quarantillo ended up getting the finish from the back with a ground and pound from back control, which was absolutely beautiful. But Gabriel Benitez, Mowgli, almost knocked him out at the start of the third round. So it was one of those complete domination, except for basically one punch. Well, Benitez had a little bit more than that. He landed some punches and stuff, but Quarantillo looked good throughout it, to be honest. I think taking too many shots might be his issue, but you can't give out to him too much when he's that dominant throughout it. Looked good. Rodolfo Vieira got a lovely rear naked choke. Dustin Stoffels was doing good, or doing well even, but he made a grave error at one stage. He was on top. And there was a bit of a scramble with Vieira, who's the world champion jiu-jitsu player, as we know. And instead of settling in a position or kind of pushing to get out, he attempted to get on top himself, went for a single leg and opened up his back to Vieira. And as they were getting up, Vieira smart enough to, I think on the ground it would have been tougher to just transition and get the back. He actually, I maintain he let him get the single leg and get back up so that he could transition out of it. Saw the back was open, took the back, rear naked choke immediately. It was that easy. Very good performance from, or a very good finish from Vieira. Now, I wouldn't say the best performance in the world, but that's all you need is the finish. Then Matthias Gamrot made light work of Jeremy Stevens. Easy takedown, an easy double wrist lock submission, as Shayna Baszler would call it. Very, very good. I saw all the people on the broadcast were picking Jeremy Stevens, and that's based off of name alone. Gamrot 19-1 now. I think everyone listening to this podcast and everyone reading Sean Denny's articles over the last few years knows how good Gamrot is, and how good is Norman Park too. For him not to still be around on that stage is a crying shame. But what a win for Gamrot. Really, really good. 155 pounds. I think he's ready for, if you're fighting Jeremy Stevens, you're ready for a step up, and I wouldn't mind seeing him fighting someone good. What about, we'll get to the main event, but him versus Thiago Moises, I wouldn't mind seeing that fight. I think that'd be a fun fight. But before we get to that main event, Miesha Tate, I thought she looked smooth. I don't know what you thought, lads, but the right hands down through the middle from the very start. I know it was thrown, and she was attempting to get into a slugfest with her at times, and Miesha Tate was happy enough to do it. She looked like she was doing all the right things at all the right times, and that's not what you'd expect out of someone who's been out of the cage for 5 years, even if they fought at the level Miesha has. She looked better than ever. She looked really, really good. I was able to get the ground and pound stoppage right near the end. Won the first two. The first one was relatively close, but I think she won both of those rounds, and then was able to get the finish late as well. So, she didn't call out Amanda Nunes by name at the end, but she was like, I'm coming back for that belt. And it looks like that's what she wants. So, if Miesha keeps performing like this, there aren't many women in that 135 pound roster who will be able to beat her. So a very, very good performance. And Marion Reino, that's her retirement fight, so I'm looking forward to the next one. And then in the main event, it was a bit of a frustrating watch, to be honest. The main event literally ended about 5 minutes ago. So the result isn't even up in Tapology here. I'm looking at it. Makachev got the rear naked choke in I think it was 4th round. It's not up here yet, but I thought Moises was doing okay early. I gave him a chance in this fight because I thought defensively he would be able to do well and then land a few counters. And I think he actually did pretty well defensively with the striking, but he wasn't able to land any counters. And his circling game was good at the very start, or he tried to do it the right way anyway. Makhachev just was absolutely brilliant at cutting off the cage with his footwork, and then he was throwing that left hand down the middle to stop him going either way. But if you're Moises and that happens to you, right, and there's no way out and you get taken down, you have to go back to your circling when the next round starts. And it felt like Makhachev took that away from him and Moises never went for it again. And when that happened, that fight was absolutely over, because when you can't circle away, you turn into Anthony Pettis. And okay, you might get a guillotine or you might get a leg lock or something like that, which we haven't seen in the UFC in 15 years. You might get one of them, but probably not. And what probably is going to happen is Makhachev is going to throw those left hands down the middle. He's going to take you down. He's going to wear you out. And as Michael Bisping said in the commentary, there's going to be a look of defeat on your face when you're going back to your corner. And that's what happened. Like, I genuinely think if you go back and watch that fight, and it was about maybe 2 or 3 minutes in, you could see a look on Moises' face where he realised he can no longer cut off the cage. Or he can no longer stop Makhachev from cutting off the cage, so he could no longer circle, and from that point on the fight was over. To be honest, when I saw him stop trying to circle, and I'm not saying he gave up, and I'm not saying he stopped trying to fight. He did try different things. He went for a leg lock and a toe hold, and he was trying to land a few shots. Didn't throw that many shots, didn't land that many shots, but he by no means gave up. But he was kind of beaten at that stage. He took the fight out of him, Makhachev, with his footwork alone. I thought it was very, very evident the way he fought from kind of that point on. But a very good performance from Makhachev. That, to me, footwork and cutting off the cage, if you're that sort of a fighter, is brilliant, because Khabib didn't really have that, Khabib didn't have that excellent footwork and that striking to get inside. Khabib was just like run at you and do smart things and run in smart places, but it was very much head down, go forward, throw his body at you in a position where he's going to frighten you into not hitting him and then take you down. Makhachev, I think, is a lot more basic is the wrong word. What's the word I'm looking for? Technique orientated, I suppose it would be, or doing the right things at the right time. Fundamentals, that's the word I was looking for. Fundamental orientated with his footwork and with the way he cuts it off the cage. And going forward, 19-1 now. There's a lot of guys going to be very quick to avoid Islam Makhachev, and I think they'd probably be fucking right too. Right, lads, I'm going to bed. God bless you all. Thanks very much for listening.